Well, welcome guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Drew and we are learning functional anatomy together. I've got my mushroom elixir drink here, a nice bit of reishi, and I've got my complete anatomy ready to go, and we're going to be looking at the deltoids today, so the shoulder muscles. So before we start, we'll be using the Complete Anatomy app, and we're just going to be scratching the surface of this app. Highly recommend you go and get your own copy. The yearly subscription is really reasonable. So anyone who's interested in movement, anatomy, therapy, or just learning more about your body, it's a great tool to use. So there'll be a link in the description. I'm not affiliated. I ain't getting any kickback at all from Complete Anatomy, but I just think it's a great app and very helpful, particularly if you don't have access to a cadaver lab. I mean, you can't beat actually getting your hands on an actual body, either a live body, or if you have access to a cadaver lab, you can get in and actually use someone who's donated their body to science to learn and feel and kind of get that 360-degree perspective. But this is the next best option outside of being able to get into the labs. So let's have a look at our deltoid. Deltoids are a really cool and very interesting muscle. We typically break it up into three sections. So you have this section here, which is known as the anterior deltoids, the front shoulder muscle. Deltoid, I think it's Latin for three. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, it's three sections. Then we have the medial delt, which is on the lateral side, and then you have the posterior delt, which is on the posterior side. So they all share the same nerve innervation, which is the C5, C6 nerve root. So C5, C6 is the nerve that's going to come out of the neck here. So this is typically C7 here, C7 there, and then this is C6, so that's C5 there. So C5, C6. So the nerve that's kind of coming out through this space here, cervical foramen, is going to come out through the traps and then innervate into the deltoid through here. So any neck problem or any upper shoulder trap issue can have trickle down effects onto the deltoid itself, and you get a lot of referred pain into the shoulder coming from the neck. So when we're doing any work with someone who's got a existing shoulder problem, we always like to kind of address the neck as well, because it can affect the neck, the shoulder directly. So that's the first thing to kind of keep in mind, C5, C6 nerve. Okay, so let me go back to information. Now, attachment. So we'll do the three sections on their own. So the anterior deltoid, we have what's called the clavicular attachment here. So you're attaching onto your shoulder bone, okay, or your collarbone. So that's that flat bone. It kind of comes out through here. And it kind of lines up roughly with the AC joint. So some people, you can feel the AC joint. It's like a little step down or a rough section where you go from the scapula, the acromion process meets the clavicle there. You can see that little space there. There's cartilage typically in there. So roughly that kind of lines up with the AC joint. And then distally it attaches onto the humerus, almost halfway down the arm. So if you draw a line straight across from here, like the distance of the humerus, it's typically around about that top 1/3. Okay, almost halfway down. It's going to be a little bit variation on most people. So it's a lot further down than when you typically think. Another way to kind of do it is you get your hand, put your thumb on your acromion process and just kind of spread your fingers out down there, go one and then go two. You'll find kind of halfway down, there's like a rough spot. And that's typically where the deltoid attaches onto what's called deltoid tuberosity. So this area on the humerus here, we can share kind of tendon of the deltoid attaching onto the deltoid tuberosity here. And interesting enough, when you get rotator cuff problems, particularly with supinatus, you often get referred pain down to here. And you can get a bursa underneath this tendon here as well. So you can get deltoid bursitis, and often goes overlooked and undiagnosed or dismissed. So you'll get this kind of deep aching pain generally before exercise, before you're moving, when you're cold, when you have warmed up. When you start get going, it tends to go away. And then after you cool down, after you work out, it comes back and it's like really sore and deep and achy. And you kind of like this throbbing pain going down your arm. It's pretty yuck. Then we've got the medial deltoid. So the medial deltoid here, we have a little bit on the acromion process here, and then on the clavicle, that's the AC joint. So all this kind of lateral edge, and even goes onto the posterior aspect of the spine of the scapula a little bit. So this is the spine of the scapula here. And so it's getting this kind of a little bit on the back, a lot on the side, and a little bit on the front. So this is your primary shoulder abduction movement, so out to the side. So any movement you're doing takes your arm out to the side, that's shoulder abduction. So that's the primary movement there. So your classic dumbbell lateral raise is what this muscle is going to be firing onto. And then again, attaches down to the deltoid tuberosity region. And then we have the posterior delt, which is on the back of the scapula. And so just sitting on the spine of the scap under there. And beneath that here, you've got one of your rotator cuff muscles. This is infraspinatus here. We'll do a whole video on the rotator cuff muscles coming up soon. All right, so posterior line of the spine of the scapula, and again, coming down onto that deltoid tuberosity. So it's kind of like the Achilles tendon, as like the big two calf muscles, like the two big heads of the calf muscles that come down into the thick Achilles tendon. And then underneath that, you've got the slits which come down and they kind of merge into one big thick tendon. Okay. So it's just a pretty big, powerful muscle. Now, the next thing we want to look at is then the movement, which is kind of really cool. So if we go into motion in complete anatomy, and we're going to look at the anterior deltoid motion first. So there's three things that it does. So let's have a look at them one at a time. This mushroom brick is so good. Okay, so here we have medial rotation of the humerus. So if we start in this position, this is anatomical position. So you're standing, your palms forward, your thumbs on the outside. Look at the line of pull from the collarbone down to the deltoid tuberosity here in 5 directions. So when it pulls, it's going to basically pull on this part of the humerus. Because the humerus is like a shaft, it's going to rotate. It's going to rotate or turn the shaft inward. So, or internal rotation or medial rotation. In this position, medial rotation, and then relax, come back to neutral, medial rotation, back to neutral. Now notice here we've got some chest involvement as well. So we've got big pec muscles here, rotating the arm in. So this is an important thing to do, to notice. If you have too tight chest and too tight anterior delts, okay, you can get stuck in this kind of medial rotation position. And if you're in medial rotation, you kind of know that with people because their shoulders are forward and they're rolled in and they're kind of stuck down. They're kind of like pulled down a little bit. Okay. And that's not a good spot because that won't allow you to have really good movement when you're trying to get your shoulder above your head. Okay. So a lot of people overlook in shoulder rehab, like the actual shoulder muscles being the pecs. Like if you don't release the pecs, because it's stuck in medial rotation, or you don't release this anterior deltoid, or beneath it here, we've got another muscle called pec minor. If you don't address those bad boys, and the shoulder then won't roll back into this nice external rotation, or this is more neutral position here. So if we turn it around from the side, you can get a better view. So in there, you get stuck in this position. So the thumbs kind of roll in a little bit. Now, the posterior deltoid, when we get to that, does the opposite. It goes into external rotation. So when we get to that, we'll show you external rotation. The other movement we do on the anterior deltoid is we've got clavicular flexion, and then we go out into a little bit of horizontal abduction. So front raise, and then kind of like a reverse fly type movement here. So as you're lifting up, pec and anterior deltoids working together. You kind of can't really separate these two because they're pulling in this kind of motion. They come up. When you pause there, now if this anterior deltoid muscle here keeps contracting, it's going to keep pulling this way. And so that's going to make the arm swing around into horizontal abduction to there. So this muscle is being pulling through here. Now it's going to work in conjunction with the posterior delt. When we get to that, you'll see that. Okay. So you get this kind of combined movement, shoulder flexion, so the shoulder flexion coming up, and then horizontal abduction out to the side. Okay. The third movement and the anterior deltoid is pure shoulder flexion. So this is raising your arm up to the front, okay, and then lowering it down slowly. So lots of anterior delt. Biceps are going to be involved here as well. You're going to get pec major involved here. You're going to get traps lifting the shoulder up a little bit as well. And then on the back, depending on the line, because it's coming to the front, the posterior delts will get stretched out. They're not going to be active. So this is more for the anterior delt. So when you reach from forward, front of the shoulder delt. Okay, now if we go back and look at the medial delt, go to motion, take a drink of your mushroom drink. Reishi is for the win. Okay, here we have pure shoulder abduction. Now, some really cool things just to take notice of here. Now, watch underneath the shoulder blades lift up. So in my previous video, we we're talking about upper traps. It's the upper traps that does this part here to help lift the shoulder blade up. So upper traps engaged. And then you're also working in conjunction with what's called a co-contraction with the medial delt here in the orange to lift the arm up, and the middle and upper traps are active here as well. So this is called shoulder abduction. And full range of movement is you should be able to get your arm by your ear, palms touching each other above your head. That's full shoulder range of movement. If your pecs are too tight and biceps are too tight, what happens is it brings that humerus into the medial rotation, and then it doesn't allow this kind of turning of the humerus to clear this space in here. So you can see this tendon. This is the bicep tendon coming down. It's going to get jammed, if you can see it, up in here. So the bicep tendon comes through the shoulder, the humerus, and it will get jammed up into the acromion if the upper traps, posterior traps, deltoids aren't working correctly. And if your pec major, pec minor is too tight, it'll restrict that movement, and you'll get a lot of what we call impingement, where there's just a lot of friction that creates in this very small joint space, and then tendons get irritated or compressed or rubbed repetitively over time, and that creates friction, and then eventually that creates an inflammatory response, and then you can get things like bursitis and tendinopathies and all kinds of nasty stuff. So we want to be able to train this full range. So that's super cool. That's shoulder abduction. Yeah, so it's about this level here. It's not really showing it in this diagram too much, but when you get to about 90 degrees, this hand, see how the hand's turning up? It's going to have to roll more. So as you lift up, the hand is going to have to basically, from here, you go to here, you have to rotate the palm over to clear that space. All right, so palm down, the palm up, you have to be able to rotate it over. All right. So that's external rotation. So if you can't do external rotation, you can't clear that space in the shoulder joint to get your arm over the head. So we always are trying to restore external rotation. The problem is that we have these big muscles, pec major and the latissimus dorsi, which is huge muscles which are trying to pull you into internal rotation, trying to turn you in this way. Okay. So if you turn your palm down, thumb down and try to lift your arm up. You can kind of get to a certain level and it kind of gets jammy. And then you have to move your body around to kind of find some compensation. Not good, not good. All right, so then we go into posterior delt. And in posterior delt, go to motion, motion. And here we got this lateral rotation or external rotation here. So looking particularly where the thumb rose out, so the thumb's turning out. And you look at the shaft of the humerus, which way it's rotating, which way it's on its axis, which way is it turning on its axis. And this way it's turning out so into external rotation or lateral rotation. So we need this lateral rotation so when we bring the arm up into abduction so we can clear this space in the glenoid here. Next thing this posterior delt does, okay, so we're lifting into what's called shoulder extension. So you go from full shoulder flexion and then the deltoid helps pull the arm down behind your body into shoulder extension. So that's where you're pulling your arm behind you. Up and then all the way down, squeeze the back of the arm, squeeze your tricep, pull back. So often when we're doing shoulder rehab, we need to do a lot of posterior delt work and a lot of tricep work. One, because when you start to activate these muscles, that helps to relax the tight muscles on the anterior side. So by reciprocal inhibition. And two, they need to be strong enough to maintain scapular position. See how the scapula moves back a little bit here? Okay. So you maintain this nice rotator cuff, glenohumeral joint position. So lots of tricep work, lots of posterior delt work to get this strong. And of course, if you're doing posterior delt and triceps, okay, particularly when you're pulling barn back extension, you're going to be using lats as well. Can't not use your lats to pull back as part of the movement of the lats. So as the lats pull down, they pull the arm down into extension. Okay, last one. So we have then the horizontal abduction. So this is your classic rear delt fly. So where you bring it out in the horizontal movement, thumb roughly lining up with your armpit. Good. And then as it comes down here. So follow the line of pull, it's going to pull this way. It's going to work with the rhomboids and the middle traps to create that movement. And you're also going to get latissimus dorsi in here as well. So it's a big, powerful back movement. So when you're training for your posture, if you're not doing some kind of back extension movement, shoulder blade adduction movement where the shoulder blades are moving towards you and down a little bit, okay, you're not going to be having a really well-trained posture. Okay, so it's super important that you do some kind of posterior shoulder scapular work. One of the best exercises for that is just a bent over rear delt fly or a cable fly or a bent over row and tricep kickbacks, all fantastic to kind of get this mechanism working. Beautiful. Okay. And that, my friends, is the deltoids. Let me just go back to info. Have I missed anything? Key takeaway with the deltoid is you've got to train all three. You've got to train anterior movement, lateral movement, and then extension. And you've also got to train the rotation. And then on top of all that, you need to kind of combine that with correct shoulder blade mechanics. So for example, if you are doing anterior deltoid raise, then the shoulder blade is going to naturally protract forward a little bit. So as you reach up into the anterior delt, we go back to motion. Here, so we just come back to the first part. So you're training here, so you've got anterior delt, and this is essentially the punching move, or this is the top of your push-up. Okay, to finish that move properly, you want to protract your shoulder blade. So you want to push the shoulder forward from the shoulder blade And to do that, you use another muscle called serratus anterior, which we'll do another video on. Okay, so it's like the top of your push-up or a plank, and then you just protract the shoulder blades. And what that'll do, that'll give you a nice opening stretch through the rhomboids and the traps. But you'll also then get this real maximal contraction through the deltoid and through the pec here as well. So you want to be able to train shoulder blade mechanics. If we look at another movement example here. So as you're going into shoulder flexion, okay, so the scapula kind of swings up and under. So you want to be able to get that shoulder blade to swing up and under. And so when we do Tai Chi and Qigong movements particularly, when we're training shoulder patterns in our forms, all movement is orientated around this shoulder blade. Okay, so you've got some really big acupuncture points here. You've got some pretty big acupuncture points here, and some pretty big acupuncture points here, and then on the front of here, the lung points on the front. And so really what we're trying to do is we're trying to move through the shoulder, because the shoulder blade is going to wrap around the rib cage. And we're also trying to move through the action gland humeral here, because this is the axis of the rotation of all. So if you can link this kind of joint with the movement of the shoulder blade together in any arm movement, you will really kind of help facilitate natural functional movement. And then you link that in with correct breathing, because when you breathe properly, then the ribs are going to move with respiration, because the shoulder blade sits on top of the ribs. Every time you breathe in, it's going to basically lift up the shoulder blade. Every time you breathe out, it's going to depress the shoulder blade a little bit. So that's going to affect the movement. So then we actually lead all our movement from the center being the diaphragm with breathing particularly. So it's a center out movement. So in any form, on the inhale, all movement starts on the inhale, and then you finish all movement on the exhale as you're pointing down. So that was a little bit of a tangent, but that's how I definitely approach functional movement. You really want to be able to, at a higher level, integrate what I call the 5 cores. And so the 5 cores are pelvic floor, pelvic mechanics, okay, abdominals. So 1, 2, 3. Respiration, the diaphragm particularly, 4. And scapulothoracic mechanics, 5. So if you can get those 5 areas working functionally together, if you want to add a 6th one on base of the neck, then your spine will work really well and movement will work really well together. And then essentially a lot of injuries and knee problems just disappear, because mechanically all the joints are working in synchronicity, and they're neutralizing all the forces coming up and down through the body, and everything is just equalized and balanced, and then the body moves really well. And that's kind of the goal. So, and if you do Tai Chi practice really well, or Qigong really well, if you have a good teacher, they will teach you how to do that. In yoga, they don't have quite as a specific approach. Although what yoga does really well is train spinal mechanics, which I might do another video at some point. But yeah, it's just about understanding the movement. This is the whole point of this video series, is we understand, I call it the Lego theory. So you build the blocks up one Lego block at a time, and then all of a sudden you have all like a structure or a jigsaw. You slowly put each piece of the jigsaw puzzle in, and then all of a sudden you can see the big picture. Same with learning anatomy. You learn each muscle and each joint bit by bit. Okay, understand them in their own individual world, and then you link them together with other muscles and other joints, and then you link them together with movement patterns. And that's how you go from zoom in, zoom out. Okay, so I'm starting to ramble. We're all getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. We're just learning the functional anatomy, getting the foundations down. Hope this video was helpful. If you like this video, if you find it helpful for your own learning, it'd help me a lot if you could subscribe. If you've got a question, absolutely drop your question down in the comments. I'll have my email address in there as well, so you can always email me as well if you've got a question. And like, share, and subscribe. Feed the algorithm, support the channel. Be really, really appreciative. And I'll see you in the next one. And we'll probably look at deltoids, probably going into the biceps next. Okay, so we'll see you for that video. Cheers. Share and video.